Good morning. This is western North Carolina, Birch Mountain, about halfway between Asheville and Hendersonville. And we have 10 a.m. in the morning, Thursday morning, excuse me. And we have tornado watches out that are about halfway between here and Charlotte. And there've been, some stiff winds going on. So I emptied these pots yesterday, so that was like at least 6 to 8 inches. And they reported that we'd had 2 to 4. And we're expecting another 2 to 4. With flooding, the Broad River has been breaching its banks. Okay, so the fortunate thing for us here is that we've had rain over the last at least day before yesterday, and so the ground is already wet and can absorb water. The risk with a heavy downpour of rain is that it'll just run off because the soil is so dry. It just run off, it won't soak in. So here's my brother. Larry's out here filling up gas tanks, 5-gallon gas things, so that we'll have gas in an emergency for the emergency generators. We're going to walk down and see if there's any activity in our little gorge. So you're getting a view of the garden here at like 10 o'clock in the morning. We're all the leaves are from the poplar trees, dropping their leaves. I'm going to go this other way. Yeah, I think we're supposed to start up raining again. That we don't have winds at the moment. But those of you who know something about weather and the way the heat rises and falls, cool fronts, cold fronts, how they create wind. Oh, look at all the branches down in the garden. Okay. Told you we didn't plant anything in the garden this year because my brother had a little stroke last year. And even though he's like 98% okay, he just doesn't have the energy that he had before to work 12, 14-hour days. And, you can see all the water running down the path here. My brother formed these, what would you call it? The Inca Indians did it, and the Chinese do it, where you layer the land, create steps to help capture the water. But this is like the path alongside, so it's, I have a leak in my boots. Didn't know that. My left foot is getting soaked. Well, I bought these boots 6 years ago from Tractor Supply, and they were like $18, $22. So no harm done, right? I'm not usually out walking through puddles, so I didn't know that was what was going on. I mostly do it because I'm walking through brush and I don't want to accidentally run up against any creatures. Well, here's an elephant ear that came back. It's an elephant ear, isn't it? I can hear the frogs. You hear the rain and the frogs? Oh, I hear rushing water. Oh, so this dam he built to create a pond and a waterfall. He's got various dams built all the way down to break the flow of water. So here we have an overflow on the side and an overflow over there. So the purpose of placing all these breakers, all these dams along the gorge, of course, was to slow it down and slow down erosion. And so supposedly that's from 2 to 4 inches of rain. And you saw that it was at least 6 inches in my pots. Just remember, depending on the topography, you're going to have microclimates. Now, just point of reference, we're about 10, 12 miles from the eastern continental divide. So we're between two, 3 ranges of mountains. We have the continental divide between us and the Atlantic Ocean, and then we have the Blue Ridge Mountains and Pisgah National Forest and all that a little bit further west and north. The tallest mountain on the eastern continent is only about 25 miles away, a little over 6,600 feet high, if I remember correctly. Wow, that's impressive, isn't it? Well, I shared with you when we had a rainstorm before how it washed goldfish out of the a similar pond down in front of Larry's house. It was downstream, got flushed out and downstream. And I wasn't able to relocate it. Proven winners, bubblegum. Well, we're supposed to get, here starting up in another 30 minutes or so, we're supposed to get more rain, another 2 to 4 inches of rain. And there's flood watches out, and they're advising everyone to, stay home unless you're escaping from, a dangerous area. And people who know they live in a dangerous area should have already evacuated. If you're in low-lying area and you know that you're at risk for flooding, we've made sure that we have extra gas for the vehicles, and we have extra gas for the emergency generators that run on gasoline. At the moment, there is no wind, and it's a gentle, well, let's walk along the stream. See, even water is following this walk pathway. Larry puts down a lot of mulch. No, wood chips. He puts down a lot of wood chips to help slow down the wash of water that happens, because we have steep grade here all over the property. I'm not an expert on this, but I would say at least 15 to 30, 40 degrees of slope. And you see how he has, I think that's called Liriope, creates a nice little barrier to slow down erosion. He uses that very effectively throughout. Well, we can't see anything here yet, but we can sure hear it. Everybody forgets the power of water in terms of how many pounds per whatever. I mean, it can sweep people off their feet even when you're at 6 or 8 inches of water. You have to be really, really careful. We lose people at Rock Creek Park in Washington, D.C. at least once a year to people walking over some of those little stone bridges. See, here's another. I have to watch my footing because there's a lot of moss growing on the rocks, and that makes them slippery. Let's see if I can pull you in a little bit here. So periodically these dams really do help slow things down a little bit. hopefully. Okay, so you see how pretty the leaves are? These are from our poplar trees. What do they call that? A viaduct when it goes under the road like that? Oh, gotta be careful we don't slip and fall. I had a girlfriend who was driving home during a rainstorm in New York State, and she got just a little bit off the road where all the leaves were, and it was slippery, and it totaled her car. Fortunately, she came out without any damage. I mean, it was an Audi, I think. Good vehicle. And, but, you know, it was a miracle, right? Oh, look at how high the water is. Now, see, because Larry's redirected the water, it kind of contains it. So you can see the water level is right up to the top of this new pond he made to the grass level. So we're going to go down and take a look at this. Okay, that's from underneath the road. This is the drainage pipe. Looks like it's about 14 inches. And you see how he's planted ferns all along. That helps to hold the soil. This big rock was here, and he just worked in and around it. And this pond right here, he made from a neighbor's hot tub that they were changing out. Maybe we're just going to put it in the trash. Well, how often does it overflow like this? I don't imagine often. But look at how much water's moving through there. Isn't that spectacular? So you can see how beautiful the sun impatiens are doing, New Guinea impatiens. We're about 2.5, 3 weeks from our first frost date. Oh, look at, see, the rain makes the blossoms so heavy that they fall over. Oh, this is doing all right. Oh, beautiful one. Okay. So this is the end of my brother's property. I don't know exactly where it ends, but this side of this driveway, obviously. So water's just rushing down and goes back into the woods. Wow. Isn't that something? Well, that was Larry coming from the upper garden down to the lower garden. He filled up gas tanks, and got to have extra gas on hand in a situation. Well, We must have had wind as well as the rain, because look at how much everything's fallen over. Oh. My goodness, is that the chicken gizzard? Is that what it looks like when it gets 4 or 5 feet tall? Look at all that. I wonder if those are seed pods in there up next to the main stalk. So this doesn't really branch. Isn't that interesting? So these are what, maybe 3.5 feet tall. Here's a pink one. Look at that. Do you hear the frogs? You know, everything has its job in terms of frequency and so forth and so on. Well, a philosopher, when he studied philosophers, I'm sorry, I can't call his name right now, and he did his PhD. It turned into a book on the philosophers like Euripides, you know, the people, the man who was supposedly the foundation of mathematics and geometry and architecture and blah, 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 everything, right? And the author came to the conclusion, I'm not quite sure how he got to it, but his conclusion was that the birds sang nature into being. So the bird songs were very important. Well, I wonder what role the frogs play in terms of frequency for the planet. So I have a friend from California, classmate from Southern California, and she wanted to know what we did with all the leaves. You know, how did we manage that? Did we rake them all up? And, you know, Southern California doesn't have that many deciduous trees, if I remember right. And we explained to her that, no, we mow everything up, and it gets automatically, you know, ground up into small pieces with grass clippings, and we put them in the compost heap. And that takes care of the leaves. You have to do it, of course, on a dry day. I mean, you're not going to mow on a wet day, right? And that was one of our, I don't know, at this point, maybe 6th or 8th most popular video in terms of views. Well, so that's a review of what the garden looks like at about, well, it's probably about 10:20 now, more or less, on Thursday morning. Hurricane tornado warnings are in progress in Statesville, you know, halfway, maybe an hour or so away east of us. But remember, we have the eastern continental divide between us and an awful lot of that. So that helps to protect us from a lot of these bad storms. We get the rain and the flooding. We have had tornadoes that did severe damage. Bryson City, up near Mount Pisgah. But, you know, it's 5 or 6, 7 years in between those kinds of events. Well, thank you for joining me on this little review of the water flow during a emergency tornado watch. Thank you very much for sharing.